I don't believe in souls. How could you not believe in souls? You have a soul. It was given to you as a gift from God. It makes up who you are. It must be terrible living a life where you don't believe the soul is a gift. Better than being afraid of death because of an imaginary sky daddy, in my opinion.
Want to take a crack at that one, Kirk? They say the body is a temple, and temples need incense. So, my guest today, Mr. Kirk Cameron, suggested that we have a cigar. We're here having nice cigars, reacting to atheist TikToks, and I hope maybe we can shed a little light on some of the errors that they've fallen into. Take it away.
Well, if you're an atheist, then what happens to you when you die? My plan is to donate anything that's still usable off. This includes my bone marrow, my retinas, my reproductive organs, and my internal organs. Anything that can't be used as a medical donation, I would like to be put into a biodegradable box as one final act of harm reduction for the environment. That's not what I meant. Oh, you meant my soul. I don't believe in souls. How could you not believe in souls? You have a soul. It was given to you as a gift from God. It makes up who you are. The stuff like that makes me not believe in souls, because no one's ever been able to describe a soul to me that doesn't just sound like my consciousness or my personality, or use vague things like it's a gift that you should cherish. It must be terrible living a life where you don't believe the soul is a gift. Better than being afraid of death because of an imaginary sky daddy, in my opinion.
Want to take a crack at that one, Kirk?
I don't know if you know this or not, but I am a recovering atheist. And so there is a level of empathy that I have for this girl. And my heart goes out to her, because I too used to enjoy my sin so much that I would make up any number of excuses to deny the existence of God, the soul. And there's a lot of great arguments out there. Look at Christopher Hitchens. You know, he could go all day long with most Christians. But at the end of the day, she made a comment about being afraid of a daddy figure.
Daddy's home.
I wonder what that relationship with her dad might have been like to cause her to think that that's where we're going with all of this, is to try to produce fear in the hearts of people, or for some abusive tyrant in the sky. That's not why I became a Christian when I used to be an atheist. I was motivated by gratitude, not by terror.
Give me evidence of God not existing in this world.
Which God?
The
Christian God?
Yes.
Do you believe in free will?
Yes, I do believe in free will.
Do you believe that God knows all?
Yes, I do believe that God knows all.
Okay. If God knows my future, if God knows the decisions I'm going to make, can I choose differently from what God knows I'm going to choose?
I think so. Yeah, I would say yes.
Okay, well then God cannot be all-knowing. For him to be all-knowing, he must know my future. If he can't know my future, he can't be all-knowing.
I think we've got to define terms of what we do. I think that the will is actually not free. I think the will is actually in bondage until it is set free. And so there's some nuancing there that we'd have to talk about. But how I'm able to make real choices, like I think I chose to not light my cigar, and you chose to light your cigar.
Yep.
And I think they were real choices that we made. I don't think that we're just mere robots. And yet, at the same time, I believe that God, in his omniscience, knew the future. And somehow those two things coexist. I don't understand it. I don't know how. But that doesn't make me deny one or the other, because the scriptures say so. And that is my ultimate authority.
And then a really simple answer, like a really basic level answer to his question about how God can know what we will do even before we freely choose to do it, is just that God is outside of time and space. So if space-time is part of creation, as it manifestly is, I don't think he would deny that, then God, the creator, would necessarily be outside of that. And God enters into time and space in the person of our Lord in the fullness of time in the Roman Empire, but he's also outside of space-time. So that's how. It'd be I guess a way to try to conceptualize it is that God sees all of time at once, whereas we live in time because we're actually within the creation. I guess he's never considered that.
3 reasons, among many, that I am an atheist. Have you ever noticed that most people are the religion of their parents? You'd think that if there was one super obvious religion, then everyone would have converted to that by now. But instead, most people are the religion that their parents are affiliated with. If there is a God, then he must be a really horrible person. It's not uncommon to hear believers say, "Oh, God saved my baby, what a miracle," even though that same God is completely ignoring all of the babies dying in extreme poverty across the world. It seems to me like God favors those who already live in affluent societies who have access to great medical care. But if you bring this up to believers, they'll say some nonsense about how God has to test some people. There's also just no evidence that God exists, and sure, I've heard tons of personal anecdotes about miracles and seeing things that couldn't be explained, but to me, every time I hear a story like that, there's always a more logical explanation for the phenomenon. Some say the human body is evidence that God exists, but it's riddled with design issues. We get addicted easily, our eyes are too weak, we need surgery constantly, and before modern medicine, women died in childbirth.
So the first point, she says most people are the religion of their parents, and maybe that's the case. Some people are unthinking about it or lukewarm even in their religion. I know a lot of converts. I don't know about you. Much of the world was converted.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting things that sometimes we don't think about is that Christianity started not in the United States with Billy Graham. It started in the Middle East. This started in the heart of a different faith, right? And so much so that the founder of it, Jesus Christ, was accused of blasphemy and was crucified.
Also, she brings up the point of theodicy, which you mentioned earlier, the problem of suffering. She says there's something unjust about this. People get sick and they die. But I guess then my question would be, how do you know that's unjust?
That's right. She's just assuming there's such a thing as justice. She's also borrowing from the Christian worldview in order to make that statement.
Yeah.
So in a sense, she's like a kleptomaniac who's reaching into the house of the people she's disagreeing with, grabbing their stuff, and then framing an argument against them.
Right.
We live in a fallen creation, and there is entropy, there is disease, there is all sorts of things that have come as a result of rebellion against the God whose existence you deny.
What is happening to you? You'll see. You'll see, too. You'll all see. You'll all see.
I was recently doing an interview for my book, Born to be Brave, talking about revivals and great awakenings and spiritual comebacks of nations. And the interviewer relayed a quote to me from Richard Dawkins. And he was asked, what kind of civilization or world would you like to live in if you could choose any of them? And he said, I'd like to live in a Christian world. And he says, but I don't care that whether or not people go to church and believe in the resurrection. I thought to myself, that is the most foolish thing in the world you could say. That is, saying that you like a Christian world, but you don't care that church attendance is declining, is like saying that you like produce, but don't care that all the farms are shutting down.
It's calling for an effect without a cause, which is kind of like the people who acknowledge the existence of the world, but won't acknowledge the existence of the world's creator. Next one.
Do you believe in God?
No.
All right. Are you an atheist?
Yes.
Okay. What made you stop believing in God?
I never believed in him from the beginning.
Okay. Did you have any religion at any point?
No.
Okay. Do you believe in an afterlife?
No.
Okay. Do you believe in scientific theory of evolution?
No.
Okay. What do you think man came from?
I'll try not to think of it. It's beyond me.
Okay, cool. Any words you'd like to say to people?
So.
It all gets summed up in that one line. I try not to think.
Don't worry. Be happy.
That's the existential trap that so many young people have found themselves in. I'm going to smoke something or I'm going to drink something. I'm not going to think too much because it confuses me or it depresses me or it scares me.
Or it's rude. Some people think it's rude to follow ideas to their logical conclusions and then come to firm convictions. They think it's kind of like judgy or something.
Because it's judgy. But even judging a person for that is judgy.
Right.
I don't know why you always have to be judging me. Because I only believe in science.
So you've got to judge somewhere. And if you're not thinking that you ought to judge between good and bad, truth and error, don't have kids.
Yeah.
Because your children could have very, very bad, wicked, evil things happen to them. And you're going to kind of say, what? I don't really think about it, son. hey, sweetie, there's really no such thing as good and evil.
This is why the church has concluded that the existence of God can be known with certainty from the natural world merely by human reason. There's much more to know from revelation, but the existence of God can be known with certainty.
And in the same way, for there to be good or evil, as the previous atheist said, your God must be an evil God if he lets children suffer, there must be a moral lawgiver for us to even posit anything as evil. Otherwise, someone could say that cancer is not bad, poverty is not bad, that's just the way bacteria reacts at these temperatures.
Right now, go to hallow.com/Knowles. While the left pushes its winter holiday propaganda and corporations try to turn Christmas into nothing but a shopping spree, there is actually a profound ancient tradition that brings real meaning to this season. I am talking about Advent, baby. Advent, which is about a baby. It's about the incarnation. Now, if you are like me and you want to really prepare your heart for the birth of Christ instead of just getting caught up in the secular happy holidays nonsense, I have exactly what you need, and that is Hallow. Hallow is the #1 Catholic prayer and meditation app. They've created something extraordinary for Advent. They're launching their Advent Pray 25 Challenge, and let me tell you, this is not just another meditation app. This is about connecting with God during one of the most sacred seasons of the year. What I love about Hallow is they understand the difference between real Christmas music and commercial jingles that you hear at the mall. They have both Advent and Christmas music. Yes, there's a difference. Yes, both are magnificent. Join me on Hallow for daily prayers, meditations, and guidance from some of the most profound spiritual leaders of our time. Here's the best part. Hallow is offering my listeners 3 months completely free when you go to hallow.com/Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S, HALLOW.com/Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S, for 3 months free. Join the Advent Challenge, grow in your faith. Let's celebrate this season the way it was meant to be celebrated.
Something that we don't talk about enough, I feel like, is the fact that, at least to my end, I don't think you can choose to be an atheist. Like, there was a period in my life where I feel like I wanted to be a Christian, but it was like, it's not possible. Like, if you don't believe, you just don't believe, and you can't choose whether or not to believe. Like, religious people often frame someone's lack of belief as some sort of active refusal, but that's not really how it works. Like, even if I wanted to, and there was a time that I really did, I wouldn't be able to. I wasn't able to. Like, it's genuinely not up to me. Like, my brain just won't believe in things that are patently ridiculous. I don't control that. You'd have an easier time trying to convince me the tooth fairy was real.
Well, she makes one good point, which is you can't make yourself believe something that you don't believe to be true. But I do wonder when she says it's patently ridiculous. Okay, if her problem is really one of belief, and I'm not convinced it is, it might be a problem of behavior, it might be a problem of vices that maybe cloud the intellect and that she wants to hold on to, but without speculating on any of that. If she really wants to believe and she wants to avail herself of these ideas, has she read the church fathers? Has she read the doctors of the church? Has she at the very least exposed herself to the great arguments for religion?
Probably not.
I suspect that she probably hasn't, but I also think that she's telling the truth. Not that these things are patently ridiculous, because no, they are the definition and standard of truth that we believe. But I think she is correct in that she can't force herself to believe. I believe, from my theological framework, that there are profound truths behind unbelief. And I think that the person who is proud of heart, who is hard of heart, is incapable because they are dead in their trespasses and sins. They are blind, and what they need is sight. I never found God when I became a Christian. I believe that I was the one who was lost and he had to find me. He opened my eyes and saved me. And that's what I pray God would do for this young lady.
Yep, totally agree. Next one.
As an atheist, you're still religious. How so? Well, you believe in science. You worship science. Your God is science. Our science, who art in reality, hallowed be thy facts. Thy studies come, thy proof be done, in time as it is in space. Please stop. And lead us not to fairy tales, but deliver us from mythos. For thine is the kingdom, the phylum, and the species, forever and ever. Amen.
Wow, that was creative.
It was creative. It was a little try-hard, I would say, because I wouldn't say that the scientific atheists, well, I don't think they're all that scientific anyway, but they're not religious in that religion is a habit of virtue that inclines the will to give to God what he deserves. So they're irreligious, they're not, but they do accept as a matter of blind faith, not even reasonable faith, certain things which are built on Christianity. And they're not even aware of that. I guess they're not even aware that their supposedly logical thinking and their empirical observations really are grounded upon certain unprovable premises. For one, that the things that we perceive are real. Two, that your faculties of reason are reliable. Three, that there is such a thing as objective truth. All those premises have implications for the existence of God. They're standing on the shoulders of giants, the founders even of much of the scientific revolution, who were deeply Christian, most of them, and they think that they're flying.
I got a comment recently asking why I make the sort of content I do, asking why I choose to define myself by that which I don't believe, comparing identifying myself as an atheist to someone who doesn't collect stamps calling themselves a non-stamp collector. Imagine if more than half of the country you lived in was made up of stamp collectors, with the majority of these stamp collectors believing that anybody who doesn't collect stamps is going to be eternally tormented. And many of their leaders made millions of dollars off their fellow stamp collectors through tithes and offerings. Imagine if stamp collectors became well known for their bigotry, their attacks on democracy, their support and protection of known and their inability to value consent. Imagine all of this, and then when you ask to see their stamp collection, they open up the book, and there's nothing. The pages are blank, and they tell you, have faith. When you die someday, you'll see the stamps. You too might start calling yourself a non-stamp collector.
I guess the only problem with that analogy is every part of it. I don't know.
Is every part of it?
Imagine if a tuna fish suddenly sang out the songs of Puccini.
Aspetti, signorina, le dirò con due parole chi son.
Like, okay, I can imagine that, but that's not apt. You know, it doesn't really.
Right, but however, you know, she's articulate enough to take. You know, if you're following her all the way through this. Well, I could see how that could persuade some people. I'm not saying it's good. It's a good argument.
But her point,
I don't think it is.
She says, you know, the stamp collecting organizations or the churches, and they don't pay taxes, and they make a lot of money, and they wield a lot of power. And I think, okay, well, churches don't have to pay taxes. They are targeted by the government. They're spied on by the current administration. But I think, what about just regular lib nonprofits and NGOs? They rake in tons of money.
Right.
They also don't pay taxes. They're talking about some sexual abuse scandals which have existed in the church in actually different ecclesial communities. But I think, okay, well, the rates of sexual abuse in public schools are twice the rate of that in Catholic churches or the Baptists or even other religions.
And if it weren't for Christians and their standards of morality, I think that the rate of sexual abuse would be skyrocketing.
Right, of course. They wouldn't even be considered a problem.
All of that.
Right. And then I guess the other real problem is that collecting stamps is trivial.
Exactly. That's the big problem.
And asking, who are we? What are we for? What is good and bad? And what is the end of man is not trivial. That's something every person naturally and inevitably confronts. My favorite was probably the nerdy pro-science guy, because it was try hard enough that at least he prepared for it, you know? It's between him and the black guy who is just like, oh man, I don't care. I don't think about any of this stuff, man. And I thought, well, there's some honesty there at least. All right, okay.
The one that's standing out in my mind was the first girl with the dark circles under her eyes and the short haircut, and she talked about the mean daddy figure.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but feel I want to remember her in my prayers tonight.
Yeah, that was probably the realest
My heart
one,
went out to
probably.
her.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good thing to do. Good thing to pray. Even better than arguments, ultimately. See you next time.
This is a news story talking about the existence of atheist megachurches. I mean, what do you do there? Do you sing worship songs at an atheist church? What do you say? Like, evolution, this I know, for Charles Darwin told me so. Accidentally alive, if you're weak, you won't survive. That's the logic, right? That's what they're saying.